Very nice to see you all. While I was recovering from the sleeper train this morning, I checked. I checked what was going on at home. A couple of the big stories are conveniently relevant for me today. One about the Daily Record and the Sunday Mail, which may be laying off around 90 of its editorial staff. That's about a third of its editorial workforce, and is possibly the largest single cull in Scottish media history. So we will see how that develops. Also, quite a lot of coverage around the fact that the council approved a planning application by Dr. and Mrs. Murray, who wanted to demolish a house next door to theirs so that they could extend their garden. I'm sure that's not ringing any bells with any of you, but Mrs. Murray is more often known as J.K. Rowling, who I believe has written some books, I think. Anyway, for my part today, I'm going to share with you some of the main media relations challenges that we currently face at the Council, and in the context of how visible we tend to be. So I'll be looking at how the speed of communications is a double-edged sword, how our target media is often not the media at all, how we can't even be sure sometimes of what a journalist actually is, and why hyperlocal media is going national. Finally, I'll summarise what it is that we are doing about those. So my modest aim today is to illustrate our experiences in a way that provides some interest for the work that you do. But before I get started properly, can I just have a quick show of hands, please, for people who have visited Edinburgh? Oh, well, that's an excellent result. I'm not even sure I saw anyone who didn't have their hand up. But if you didn't, I can only endorse Charlie's kind but accurate words about Edinburgh being one of the best cities on the face of the planet. And for the rest of you who have been, I trust you had a great time, found the city to be fabulous, and formed the view that the local authority must be doing an excellent job. Excellent. That was the response I was looking for, I think. If you were laughing with me, not at me. So, in theory, the City of Edinburgh Council is a humble municipal authority of interest only to the local community. In practice, of course, what goes on in Edinburgh tends to be disproportionately covered in the media, and sometimes that's helpful for us, and sometimes it's not. And although we're not unique, the organisation that I work for is always under the spotlight. It's a unitary authority covering the full range of local government responsibilities, and our work touches on topics of relevance, I think, probably to everyone who's in this room today, from teaching to care services, from consumer rights and the environment, and even to organised crime and ethical investment. I don't know if Total have come along today, and I'm struggling to think of a connection with them, unless oil exploration is about to begin in the fourth, but I doubt that. We're also a capital authority, home to the Scottish Parliament, Scottish Government, the Queen's official residence in Scotland, and many national events and institutions. In the next few weeks alone, we're the National Lead for Armed Forces Day. There's the state opening of Parliament, and then just before festival season kicks off, we've got the other royal wedding that's going on this year. Plus, we have a thriving media sector, insofar as it's thriving anywhere on our doorstep, including the country's political correspondence. So when a local government issue needs to be covered in a Scottish context or even a UK context, it's not unusual for Edinburgh to be one of the first ports of call. And whether a story is good or bad, we probably have better odds of it getting wider coverage, all of which influences the challenges that we face and how we deal with them. The first I want to cover is about the speed of communications being a double-edged sword. Last year, we received calls about an explosion in a block of flats in which 3 children died and an adult was reported as being seriously injured. To give you a flavour of the calls, some journalists were at the scene and they were quite confused about what they couldn't see because there wasn't any smoke. One who was back in the office was insistent on knowing if we were rehoming people and if we'd set up an emergency reception centre. Another was adamant that we had staff on the ground providing counselling to victims of shock caused by the blast. We were able to rebut some of that quickly, and we were even able to provide a brief, safe comment, because we don't like a vacuum. But on other aspects, it was impossible to get anything to say about it. Because what emerged relatively soon was that there hadn't been any big explosion or any fire, but that a woman had tragically stabbed her 3 children. At that point, it obviously became very much a police matter, but we'd already had to face down some very impatient inquiries and be tentative in our response, regardless of the media demands. The critical period between the incident actually happening and the situation becoming a bit clearer was just a matter of a few hours. So the main problem during that time was that rumour and misinformation was able to spread very quickly, often under the guise of being fact, and that created demand for answers. The advantage was that to an extent we were able to respond just as quickly, but some things, such as a police investigation, just take time. And that's no matter how fast others expect the world to turn and how uncomfortable it may be to defy those expectations, or uncomfortable to be sitting there with a vacuum in what you're saying. Last winter, Edinburgh experienced prolonged severe weather over 3 weeks, including the city's worst snow for about 40 years. Thanks to Twitter, we were able to provide a much better service on school closures and other vital public information. But because we could do that almost instantly, it created inconsistencies with the other platforms and media that we were using, and that was spotted by some disgruntled individuals. And that was just one of the questions about our processes and priorities that arose during the time. As a city, we faced major problems in keeping our roads and pavements clear. That affected our staff, providing vital services, and we had to take extra steps to make sure we were caring for vulnerable people particularly. And December is also our other peak tourist season for Hogmanay, so we had work to do on that. All these operational challenges involve a communications element, or certainly should anyway. But because the weather was so severe and lasted for so long, it really tested our systems right across the council. And such persistent pressures taught us more than we could hope to learn in years of normal business, including the extent of our audience's needs and expectations. Something that I feel went well, though, was when we provided information principally for the public. We were using that to our advantage in dealing with the media as well. It was one example of how our conscious focus is increasingly on providing content online for all different types of audience, including the media, and not packaging the information specifically for them. We did that during the snow, and we know that journalists were following our Twitter feed closely and using the material without us putting it to them directly. It's something we've done with our elections update map on 2 occasions now, which is fed by and shows up on Twitter, but which also provides an easy visual guide to the progress with election counts and results. And we had that on large screens in our count hall in the media facility at the Scottish Parliament elections last month. But the furthest we've taken it was during the papal visit last September. We issued very little in the way of news releases or operational notes to the media. Nearly everything that we got, everything that we had to say, went onto a specific site we set up for the visit. And it was focusing on information for the public who might be looking to attend or otherwise affected by it. And it included quotes from our council leader. We would update it pretty much as the information came into us. And when journalists called looking for the latest route details or wanting to know where the toilets were going to be, then we were able to just send them to the website. And this way of working is really helping us at the moment in dealing more efficiently with the queries that we're getting, because there's been no great drop-off in interest. Despite the pressure on newsrooms, that's still there, and it feels to me like the journalistic community is getting bigger. Indeed, we're not even sure now how we define a journalist. What about the blogger, the grassroots stringer, the ex-hack who's turned to PR but still does a bit of freelancing on the side, or the community news site editor, or the student reporter? And it's no longer necessary for them to have an official title and an NUJ membership card to be credible or valuable. We also have to think about what's their priority in relation to other journalists. It hasn't created a big issue for us yet, but it could. either in generating a level of queries that we can't deal with, or internal difficulties because colleagues don't perceive them as important. One of our councillors was filmed at a public council meeting recently, in the middle of debates, doing Sudoku. And not surprisingly, there was a fair level of interest in that. And it so happened it was a Guardian online reporter who did the filming, but it could equally have been any other observer.